Hey folks, and welcome to a very special edition of Helium Hacks Happy Hour. I hope everyone had a good week, and a lot went on this past week in the Helium ecosystem. We've got a couple of very special guests. I see Hashcode is with us tonight. What's up, man? Um, you folks have been very busy over there. I believe Dal. Thank both of you for joining us on this. And I spoke with Professor, and I think he's going to try to drop in here as well to talk to us about validators. And I want to be respectful of you guys' time. And so if we just want to jump directly into this, if you just want to kind of introduce yourselves and say, what role you serve on the Helium team and what's been going on lately. It's a pleasure to have you.
Sure, Travis. Hey, everyone. I've joined these before, but for those folks who don't know, my name's Del Gamel. I've been at Helium now. This is my fourth year, and I focus on the usage side. So I'm responsible for managing the portfolio there. And then also I was asked to help out with validators. And so Travis was kind enough to reserve us some time at the beginning to just give you guys some updates and share what's going on in the world of validators.
Thanks, Dal. Yeah, I see Professor joined us as well. Professor, just to bring you up to speed, thanks a lot for joining us once again. I know, the crowd has really enjoyed the times that you have been able to jump on the calls. And today, we're just going around. Dal just introduced himself. And if you two guys want to do that as well, and let the folks know if for any reason they don't know who you are, kind of what role you play and what we're going to talk about, which is validators tonight.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Abhay. You see me on Discord as Hashcode. I've been part of the Helium team since September, and I run the product org, and I'm also responsible for product for the blockchain in general. So yeah, happy to be here, happy to talk about validators, also happy to talk about how we fit with other sort of crypto in general and blockchains in general, since that's sort of my perspective on all these things.
Awesome. Excellent.
Andrew, you want to go next?
Well, he works out his, he basically rewrites a driver for his headset in Linux on machine code. I'll just give a quick intro and validator. So to tell the story of validators really needs to come from the story of the network. As you guys know, the network has been growing crazy fast. I used to keep up with how many days there was between 1,000 validators that got added, and it was happening too quickly, so I kind of gave that up. But I think there's 70,000 plus, and we just anticipate that that's just going to continue to grow. So in order to really scale out this network, the existing infrastructure to do consensus group work wasn't going to continue to help us scale in the way that we need it to. And so this is where validators come in. The hotspots that are doing the consensus group now, as you know, they're just consumer grade devices running on home internet connections. So maybe decent down, not so great up, likely very asymmetrical. And we recognized early on that, for a network to truly be global, to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of nodes so that you get this complete global network, we can continue on the same path. So validators came along. Validators will take on the work of those hotspots that are doing the consensus group. So that percentage, so you hear a lot of concerns from the community in terms of, oh no, now is validators going to take all the the rewards, and what happens to mining and stuff like that? Well, the rewards for consensus group was very small, 6%. And so yes, the validator nodes will get those 6% rewards, but the majority of the rewards is still being reserved for hotspots and miners. And the reality is, if we didn't move to this validator node type of model, then nobody would get rewards because the network would eventually just fall over. So very important piece of what we're doing. I'm going to stop talking because Professor was telling me that he was able to join in. So I'm going to just hand it back over to him.
Can you hear me?
Yes, and see you.
All right. Okay. Sorry. I was having some technical difficulties over here.
Well, we know you're not a very technical person, so we expect that.
That's right. Sorry, I missed the beginning of this. Where do you want me to start?
Just tell us who you are for people who don't know.
Oh, okay. My name is Andrew Thompson. I am the VP of Engineering at Helium. So, nominally most of this is my fault. So, yeah, here I am. I've been on here before, as some may recall, and here I am again.
Yeah, so Professor's title doesn't do a good, it's not accurate description of what he actually does. And that's, you hear me calling Professor because he is basically got his fingers in everything. And he is, so VP of Engineering is not a great title. We should probably change that somehow, get a better one.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, right? Yes. So, I've been at Helium for, I think, 7 years now, through several pivots. And, I think, clearly we finally pivoted into a way to do the IoT that is actually interesting and I think ethical and sustainable, which is pretty cool.
And so the idea for a short amount of time beforehand in the Helium Hacks, but Travis was kind enough to reserve, was to talk about validators, right? So we announced a week ago that staking was available, and then this week we announced when staking would actually, validators would actually go active. So I think at this point we've had over 700, I think we've definitely busted through 700 validators, and we are going to activate on July 7th. And what does that mean? That means that the validator nodes will start to, thanks Abhay, 803. So validator nodes will take over the consensus group work from the hotspots. And so we're all really excited about that because that's going to result in us to really scale out the network. Blockchain times should be a lot more consistent. Consensus group times also more consistent, and that is beneficial for everybody in the network. So with that, Travis, how did you want to conduct this? If anybody has some questions, they can just jump in, or what do you want to?
We'll have kind of running questions going on in chat, but if we can kind of interject questions within this dialogue. And so if you have a question, just kind of unmute and jump in and direct it either at the team or at a particular individual. But I've got some questions too.
And just to time, we'll Professor's on the East Coast, so if you do have a question, don't wait. Let's time bound this for 30 minutes past the hour, Travis.
Sounds good.
If you don't mind. Okay.
Yep.
And thanks, Professor, for being on the East Coast and joining.
I'm happy to be on the East Coast anytime.
Yes, clever.
So a question I get asked a lot, I'll jump in and start here. It's
your show.
When these are turned on, does that mean that CG consensus groups are going to all move over at once, or will some hotspots? Is this going to be a gradual rollout?
It will be a rollout, but it'll be pretty fast. So we replace about a quarter of the consensus group every election. So about 4 elections later, you know, there should be, we'll be off, right? And then at that point, we're going to grow the consensus group up probably to 49 nodes. So it'll be much larger than it was before, because the larger we can make the group, the more secure it is. So, you know, we just, you know, we came a long way on the Raspberry Pi, right? Like, not to knock that platform, right? I mean, it's sort of a glorified cell phone CPU from 2014, but you know, it's brought us a long way, but you know, we just have to scale, and so this is really the mechanism, at least the first step. There's a bunch of other things that I think we'd like to do that we will sort of start talking about once we get through this. This has been a lot of work and a lot of time to get to this point. You know, nobody is more aware of how long we've sort of been working on this to the point where we feel confident in it than myself. But you know, and it is a big sort of, you know, we are going to have some interesting new experiences, I think, once we move over, just because it's operating in a different model, right? Like we've shaken out a lot of the issues, you know, but like this is just changing the game, right? And so we're still gonna have some learning to do as well. So it's exciting, but also, you know, definitely it's gonna be a bit of a nerve-wracking day, probably.
So why 49 APS?
So basically, you always want to have a number that is of the form 3f plus 1. So essentially, a multiple of 3 plus 1. So 49 is whatever 48 plus 1, whatever 48 divided by 3 is, what is it, 16 or something? Yeah, I think 16. 16, you know, 3 16s plus 1 gives you 49. So that's the number that we feel confident with, given the testnet experience that we've had. I'd like to go higher, but we got a little sketchy at higher numbers right now. We have some more performance work we need to do. We haven't had time. I would like to keep growing the group. You know, I would like to have, you know, a lot more, but we haven't had the engineering time to go back and scale it even further. But 49 is still pretty good, actually. You know, if you think about it, it's actually a fairly large number for sort of this space. You know, a lot of systems run with fewer consensus group nodes. Other systems work differently, but 49 is a good number. You know,
it's way better than it is now.
Yeah, it's much better than it is now. So, you know, and we were able to run, you know, 60. I think we got even higher than 60 at one point, which was pretty amazing, right? But it's just not. We still have some issues to work out on performance there and other things like that. And so we're gonna try to be conservative and just. Then we can get some scaling performance numbers and work on scaling from there. It's a engineering trade-off that we had to make to meet this timeline at all. We had to say, okay, we've done one performance pass. Let's shelve the rest of it for now. So, I mean, we did make it a lot faster and a lot more efficient, but it's just there's just more work to do.
And a lot of folks. I guess I hear them talking about, well, since consensus groups are being taken away from the hotspots, and that was something that was kind of outlined as, you know, why, you know, one of the sources of earning, why people were buying hotspots. I think one thing it's important to keep in mind is that as all of these new hotspots are getting on the network, your chances of getting into a CG are
zero.
rapidly.
Essentially, yeah, it's a statistical anomaly, right? Like you're never going to, you know, realistically, you know, essentially they don't exist from you know 16 out of 60,000. I mean, you know, like those numbers are terrible. So yeah, no, it's not a meaningful source of income for almost every hotspot, right? I mean, there are a few that have been lucky, and you know, again, sometimes some people got lucky and they were in for a long time, which is great for them. But you know, it's just not statistically meaningful on this scale, right? So yeah, I wouldn't worry. I don't think people should be too upset about that. It's not a big enough chunk of what you're getting as a hotspot host to really, I think factor in, like, I would think I was in the consensus group once when we launched the network. I was in the Genesis block, and I'm not sure I've ever been in there since. So, just kind of the nature of things, it's fine, I think, but I wouldn't worry about it.
You're going to reap a lot more rewards, by having validators in place, and as a user on the network, I have no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, remember that the more we can scale the network, the more valuable the network becomes, and you own a share of that network, right? So yes, the slice of the pie is smaller, but the pie itself grows, right? So in the end, you get, your total share of value should go up, right? Like this, the more we can make this network valuable, the more everybody involved benefits, right? That, the token price goes up, there's more demand for the token. People actually have to buy the token to do things, right? Like, you really want to have, this token actually is really a representative of a piece of the network. You're effectively trading shares of a network, right? Which is, a very interesting concept, because it's not something that most people can usually do, right? This is a sort of an interesting way to participate in a network that most people are usually not ever allowed to get anywhere near, right? Like you're not going to have anything like that with a traditional cell phone network or a traditional, ISP or anything like that. Like you are very firmly placed as a customer, not as a partial owner, or, a sort of, an entity on, that has that much deeper involvement, right? Than, so again, yes. So the more we can do, we have to scale the network. This is what we've decided we have to do. I know everybody's not thrilled with it. There are some concerns. We are not done. We are going to keep working on this, because I think it's extremely important that not only we scale the network, but we maintain we want to keep things decentralized, right? So there's, you're always getting leaned on from a centralization perspective, right? And you're always having to fight that centralizing force, right? And so we're gonna have to come up with more. We always have to fight that war, right? It's always going to be, well, it's more efficient if we put everything in one place, right? And that's true. It is more efficient, but it's not more resilient. It's not more, it's not more robust. It's not more, equitable, right? You want to avoid these forces that want to coalesce, power and influence, right? And so, we are making an interesting trade-off here, and for now, it's going to be a little bit different, but there are some stuff down the road that I would like to also do that to push it back in the other direction again. But it's like a tug of war, right? You're never really done. There's always going to be some new centralizing force coming along, and it's, everybody, all these systems have to deal with this, right? And it's just, sort of an ongoing battle.
Joey has a two-part question. And Joey, are you available just to step in here and ask these questions? If not, yeah, I can ask them for him. He was wondering what sort of work you're excited to see transition over to validators, once we get through the consensus group move.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so, there's a lot that we can't do very well on a Raspberry Pi, right? Like with the size of the network and some of the things we want to do, we are constantly just butting up against the walls that the Pi imposes on us, right? And the Pi 3B, which is sort of our baseline. I mean, I guess the Bobcats are actually a slower CPU, which is even more exciting. We've been able to push those things really, really far, but it just gets hard at some point, right? A gigabyte of memory, it sounds like a lot, but when you're dealing with 60,000 things and they're all doing stuff. Like there's just a lot going on, and it's very hard to sort of just keep yourself, you know, within those constraints, right? So it's you know, we've definitely probably made the most resource constrained, you know, system in this class that exists, right? Because we sort of tied our hands behind our backs to begin with. And then we said, oh, we're going to use a bunch of exotic cryptography and a bunch of exotic consensus systems, which I think has paid off, right? We picked systems that were tolerant of just stuff breaking at any time and rebooting and taking forever. And you know, like the system tolerates the fact that we are just like lighting these pies on fire essentially. And they're just, you know, even in a crash loop, like a lot of times they'll get 1 or 2 messages through and we will make very, very slow progress and they're really, really hurting. We've mitigated a lot of that, but yeah, there's a lot that we just couldn't do on a Pi, right? And also the problem is, and you know, like people developing for consoles know this very well, is, you know, the world moves on, but your hardware doesn't, right? So if you've deployed this gateway in the field, like that gateway should last many years, in my opinion. Like I don't want to see these old hotspots go away anytime soon. I think that we can, those should be serviceable for years, right? And so, but we are just scaling and we have more constraints, you know, we have more things to do. And so we just have to move on from that hardware from the perspective of creating blocks. And so it's going to allow us to do some of the stuff has just been challenging with the current constraints. So yeah. And also the validator community has been like actually really great. They've helped us a lot because they can sort of, they have better visibility into the system, right? And they can say, hey, I'm noticing this interesting pattern and this is what happened, you know, and they've helped us find a lot of bugs that, you know, like not major bugs, but like lots of little edgy things that are, you know, totally valid bugs, but like, you know, more eyes on the system helps make it better, right? And those people gain experience with the system. They're helping us make it more operationally friendly. They're suggesting improvements. Like we are getting a lot, you know, like we are really now starting to take advantage of sort of the open source nature of the system, right? We've been open source for a long time now. I mean, I don't even remember how long it's been, but it's been a long time. But the power of people actually having the system, you know, running in a way that's a little bit more tangible to them has allowed us to sort of get a lot more involvement with that community, which I think has been really great as well.
Yeah. The second part of Joey's question was, how might validators be used to further bolster proof of coverage and anti-gaming efforts?
Say that one more time.
How can validators be used to further, I guess we've had issues on the network regarding proof of coverage and anti-gaming efforts, you know, people trying to game the system. And by moving these into like 5.9, you know, or, you know, into cloud-based servers and off of all of these hotspots that may not necessarily have network connectivity, how can we use that to continue our anti-gaming efforts? Yeah,
that's a great question. And I'm going to be a little vague on this because I am actually in the process of drafting up a bunch of thoughts about this. I have been thinking about this for quite some time, and I would love to talk more about this. I'm just not prepared for it right now. But, you know, simply, you know, just straight from a resource perspective, there are algorithms that we cannot run on a Pi because they use too much space, they use too much CPU, right? That just the compute alone is a big factor. But not only that, you know, we can, there is another round of this coming where, you know, we call it a validator because it's validating the chain, right? And one of the things that we are going to move to is that hotspots will not be running the chain directly. They will transition into what we're calling light gateways, where effectively they have a validator that they're talking to, and that validator is saying, here's what the chain looks like right now. I'm just going to tell you, you've established some trust relationship with me as a validator, right? You say as a hotspot owner, like, this is my validator. These are my validators that I trust, or that whatever, you know, I've declared some affinity with them, and they're going to tell me what the chain is doing, because they just can't keep up with the chain. So we will have some really interesting changes around how a lot of stuff works to move in the direction of that model, right? When the nodes aren't following the chain directly, we're gonna be able to do some things a little bit differently. Some things get harder, some things get easier, and I do want to talk more about this, but it's just I haven't finished pulling it all together yet. But it's really a beginning, not an end, right? Like, this is the first step of like a whole bunch of other stuff that I want to do, right? And I think that we can really make some really exciting improvements there.
Very cool. You mentioned light hotspots, and this is something that we have a project over on GitHub, Gateway RS, and this project is open source, and this is what is going to allow light hotspots to run, you know, in conjunction with validators on the network. Can you talk about? I know we have a roadmap in place with, you know, multiple times or milestones on it, but what does that mean as far as you know, getting these light gateways out in the field and actually brought into service?
Yeah, so you know, again, one constraint we have is that hotspots are expensive, right? We don't want them to be this expensive. Like, we don't get anything out of them costing what they cost, right? Ideally, you make them much smaller, cheaper, lighter devices, you know, use less power, are easier to make, you know, all that stuff. But to do that, we have to slash the hardware requirements, right? We have to really scale these things down. And that's what light hotspots are all about, right? Is the idea that you don't need to follow the chain. You talk to a validator, and that validator gives you attested facts about the chain. Like, it's going to say that this thing happened at this height, and I, as a validator, am attesting to that, right? I'm saying, I saw this happen, and I'm putting my stamp of approval on this, right? And if that turns out to be a lie down the road, that validator can be held accountable for that, right? But yeah, like, ideally, right? Like, I would love to see a hotspot cost in the tens of dollars, and just throw them out there, you know, just put them everywhere, right? And just build the biggest damn IoT network that's ever existed, right? Because the more coverage you get, the more use cases that could never have existed before suddenly become you can, you know, this is all about, you're not necessarily even disrupting a market. You're creating a market that could not have existed before, right? There are a whole bunch of things that just you can't build right now, because either the modem is too expensive because you need to do cellular, or the battery life is like 2 days, you know, or the range is terrible, right? You need somebody with a phone to wander by, and it's like, well, this is in the middle of a field in Texas, right? Like, nobody walks in this field. You know, a guy comes by like once a year to check on the cows or something, right? But so you're never going to be in Bluetooth range. And the other two, you know, cellular is out from a power perspective, you know. I mean, maybe you could throw a Starlink in there, I guess, but those aren't cheap, and those are not power efficient either, right? But like, the idea that you could build devices that are very cheap and can last for many years on a battery, like as an end device, and then the network is very cheap to build, you know, that's a whole other sort of system that we just don't have right now, right? And there's a whole bunch of stuff.
Let's do it, man. Let's build the biggest damn network, IoT network out there, man.
I mean, we're making incredible progress, right? Like, we are, you know, everybody involved in this is absolutely, you know, the people who said that we were crazy 2 or 3 years ago, right? Don't say that anymore, right? You know, we are now, you know, like, all of us collectively have become a force to be reckoned with. And people are coming to us and saying, how can we help? How can we get involved, right? That were 2 years ago, you know, just like, this is a completely nonsense thing, and it makes no sense to us at all, and this is going to fail, right? Or this is a scam. I mean, I've been called a scam, you know, I don't even remember how many times at this point, right? But, you know, we knew what we wanted to do, and you know, we knew that we weren't a scam, and we persevered. And, you know, I think we've proven that this kind of thing can be done, and that it can build sort of new use cases that couldn't exist before. You know, this is really like one of those things where you couldn't build some of this stuff before. You know, there were, you know, you couldn't do applications for mobile before the iPhone, right? That the idea that the touch screen is huge and there's no keyboard, right? Like, you know, we've all, you know, I don't know, I'm showing my age, but I used to, you know, playing Java phones on, you know, playing games on Java phones from the 90s was absolutely garbage, right? You know, but, you know, we've seen a huge sea change in that kind of thing. But like, this is on par with that. Or just a telephone network, just the idea that you can now pick up the phone and call somebody on the other side of the country, right? Like, or the electrical grid, right? Like, there are just all these things that this couldn't exist before that fundamental technology existed. And that's really how I view this, is that we are building a new fundamental technology that there's going to be a whole explosion of companies on top of it, right? And some of the other stuff that we don't talk that much about yet, but like the idea that you can have like packet provenance, right? You can actually fairly reliably establish that a device in a place sent a packet at a certain time, right? And potentially even that packet was delivered to an API somewhere, right? For like accounting and auditing and all that, like you could build a lot of interesting things there, right? That we don't talk that much about, but we're finishing out some of the details on that. But one of the aspects of these packets traversing this system is that they effectively get notarized by the system as they traverse the system in an anonymous way. So it's not like your packet gets stamped somewhere. Like it's more like when you mail an envelope, right? The post office puts a stamp on it, and you can use that as proof that thing exists. You know, you can have a sealed envelope with a stamp on it, and you can say, this is proof that I had this thing at this time, right? That's how you used to establish copyright over something, right? But the idea that you could do that with device data as well, right? For insurance purposes, for tracking purposes, for, you know, supply chain purposes, like that's really interesting. And I think that's something, that's another aspect of this that I want to do more with, or I want to talk about more, but it's just, you know, we can only do so many things at a time.
Please, come back on Hacks anytime. We love having you here. I promised Dal that I would cut this at 4:30 or at 2:30, I guess, his time, and I've got to respect that, Dal. I'm sorry we went a few minutes over here, but
no worries.
Thank you all so much for coming on the show and talking with us.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. You guys know, as you guys can tell, Andrew, Professor, is very passionate about the network, about the blockchain, about the future for this network. And so unfortunately, he is very critical to make things happen. And so he would, if it was his choice, I'm sure he would be happy to stay on this call and talk to our community, because he's, as he mentioned, you know, we really highly value our community. They were excellent during our testnet phase. You know, we ran that testnet for months to make sure that validators were going to be rock solid when we launched it. And we had fantastic community participation, not only standing up testnet at their own validators at their own cost, but also providing really great feedback, as Andrew mentioned. So, but things still need to get done. Professor still has lots of stuff on his to-do list, as you can imagine. But before we go off, Abhay, is there anything else you wanted to sign off with before we let Travis get back to his usual running program?
Well, I think there was a bunch of questions that were asked. You know, happy to answer them on Discord. If y'all want to drop a note in Validator or in testnet about the mainnet or testnet, happy to talk about it there.
And I'll copy all of the questions from this chat over into the Hacks channel over on Discord as well. So you don't have to restate everything. I know we weren't able to get to a lot of these questions.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks Thanks for letting us crash this party for a little bit.
Yeah, no, you know, you guys are always welcome on the show, and we definitely look forward to it. Thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you on Discord, guys.
Oh, Travis, wait, what? Can I just do one parting plug?
Yeah. Jump on, man.
Yeah, so we are going to, tomorrow, we're going to push out Console 2.0 beta, and it's going to be on our staging server. We want to get as much people as possible to try that out, provide feedback, let us know what you think. So that's going to be tomorrow. We'll push out an announcement, and yeah, just look forward to folks participating. There's going to be a blog, and we'll definitely, obviously in Discord, we'll let you know, but we're pretty excited to show you guys what we've built over the past, weeks and months in preparation for this. So look forward to that.
Exciting news. You heard it here first, folks. So you know what time that's going to go live tomorrow, man?
We are shooting for tomorrow afternoon.
Awesome. Okay.
Likely, yeah, I'll just say afternoon. We'll just say that for now.
Sounds great. Hey, thanks for being a part of the show. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.